I know that doesn't sound very impressive. It's not really impressive for anything, a podcast, an online series, a television show, any of that stuff. But 7 episodes, doing this for 7 straight weeks, is impressive to me, considering I'm a guy that, for as long as I can remember, have always struggled with sticking long term with one particular special interest. I'm serious, I would always switch like every couple of months or so. The only exception has been my obsession with baseball. So I'm hoping that I can keep this podcast going for a very, very long time, even if eventually I have to switch to a non-scheduled schedule. You know what I really, really despise? I despise when things break. And no, I'm specifically talking about physical objects. Literally tonight, as I'm recording this, my computer desk chair broke. And I mean it broke in a way that any direction I leaned in, the chair would tilt. The seat would literally tilt in that direction to such an absurd degree. Whether it be facing forward, leaning back, or leaning off to the sides, my chair flat out broke. As a result, I had to get a new one. The only problem is, I don't have the money to afford one, and it broke at like 10 o'clock at night. So, that's really not a good time for it to break. Thankfully, we had old rickety chairs in our basement, so I was able to grab one and use it for my desk. I don't like this chair, but it serves the purpose it needs to for the time being. But yeah, I really, really freaking hate it when equipment or household objects just break on you when you need them the most. Whether it's a desk chair, whether it's like a power tool, or even better yet, how about a gigantic in-ground pool? Here's a little tip from yours truly. If you really, sincerely want a backyard pool, make sure you have people around you that know what they're doing. Let me tell you something. Every single spring/summer, when the warm weather starts to come in and the time comes to open the pool again, it is such a hassle. There's so many material items that we need just to prepare to open the pool. There's so much cleaning involved, and most of it is futile because, well, for many reasons actually. More often than not, it's because the equipment we have that we use properly decides not to work on us. I think of all the chores that are needed to be done to maintain a home, yard work is probably my least favorite. Now, I don't mind mowing the lawn. In fact, I actually kind of enjoy it. Because, for one, aside from it being very simple, it gives me time to myself. It gives me time with my own thoughts, which is what I need more than anything. I need time to be alone with my thoughts, and mowing the lawns helps do that. But personally, I am not a fan of anything else. I'll admit that right now. And if you're listening, I sincerely apologize for that, but I promise I will do my part when the time comes. But no, my personal least favorite is pool work, because it is so damn tedious. There are so many steps that need to be done to prepare a vacuum. And that's just setting up the vacuum. That's not even the vacuuming part. That's just setting the damn thing up. And more often than not, it'll turn out that either we did something wrong, which actually happens like 20% of the time if we're being honest, or our pool suddenly just decides to break on us and not work properly, which accounts for about the other 80% of the time if we're being frank. It gets frustrating very easily and very quickly. Oh, and the absolute worst part of it is when my grandmother will stand over and try to backseat drive, if you will, and try to tell us what we're doing right and wrong. The problem with that, though, is, and I'm probably about to sound very, very mean about this, but we've been working on the pool for several years now. She keeps bringing up the fact that she did it herself for many years, which is fine. Nobody's disputing that. But now it's our turn. And more often than not, we're not doing anything wrong. The pool is deciding not to cooperate with us. But yes, now I finally understand why people hate people who backseat drive. It gets very old. Especially when half the advice she gives us turns out being wrong anyway. Just let us do the work and try and figure it out on our own, because it really isn't us half the time. I've always wondered if it's less work or more work to get an above-the-ground pool as opposed to an in-ground pool. Because above-ground pools usually look much simpler in care than in-ground pools. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't get as much joy in going into the pool as I used to when I was younger. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because I don't have people in my neighborhood that I like to associate with, or maybe it's just that I don't like to swim anymore. When I was younger, I loved to swim. I loved to swim underwater, over water. I would do any which way, because it just felt so good to me. Lately, that's not the case. Although I admit, I still do enjoy getting knocked down by rough ocean waves, so I wonder if that tells me anything. Or maybe it has something to do with the fact that the strenuous and wholly annoying prep work for keeping our pool in good shape is dampening my value and appreciation of the pool. I don't know. Now, you're probably listening to this and thinking, boy, this guy really doesn't like to do hard work. Now, that's not true in the least. I don't mind doing the work. Not to mention, I'm physically able to do more, unlike my parents who, unfortunately, are not. The problem is, for most of my life, I was very coddled. And I was never really asked to help out with any of the major chores that were needed to be done. So I had to work up the guts to put my foot out there and offer my assistance myself. And unfortunately, as a result, I believe this has led me to be very much, for lack of a better term, behind the curve in terms of chores and housework. I don't know many of the ins and outs that come with having to care for a house, having to be an adult. Not helping is the fact that because my grandmother is very ill, both physically and mentally, my mother is resigned to having to help her out with keeping the house intact, which means I don't have much opportunity to learn from her. So I'm basically stuck. This is why I also have a lot of concerns about my future, about whether I'll be a good provider or breadwinner or even house husband if it ultimately comes to that. I'm concerned that I will not live up to my potential. I'm concerned that I will fail to come through. And to be honest, that thought kind of terrifies me. First and foremost, even ignoring my career aspirations, what I want to be remembered for is for being someone who wasn't afraid to put themselves out there and lend a helping hand. Even if he didn't know what the hell he was doing, he still offered and he still tried. I don't want to be seen as someone who lazes around and doesn't help out and refuses to do their part. And right now, I'm really worried that my lack of knowledge on how to maintain a house and how to actually adult is going to lead me down that path. Because if there's one thing in this world, only one thing in this world that I positively, absolutely do not want to be, it's a deadbeat, pathetic, useless loser who can't do anything for himself or anyone else. And I am legitimately concerned that I am heading down that path. I'm not going to say that my father is a deadbeat, because I'm always hesitant to go that far with anyone, but he's fairly close. As much as it pains me to actually say this, I don't look at my father as someone who I aspire to be. I don't look at him as someone who I want to turn out as. I don't look at him as a role model of sorts. To be honest, I just look at him as a guy who's there. Sometimes. Now, if I do have to say something nice about him, I'll say this. I do admire, to an extent, how he's able to maintain such a calm sense of center and peace when things are going wrong or people are being irritable and cranky around him, but that's about it. And even then, he takes it to an extreme that kind of turns me off. Sometimes it's like he's totally despondent, like he's not really there. And it's not really that pleasant. I'm all for staying calm in a crisis situation or just when things are going bad, but he really does take it to an extreme. But the absolute worst comes whenever I somehow get wrapped up in the middle of the nonsense that's going on, and I get frustrated and I get angry and it's visible, and then I'll unintentionally snap, and he'll just turn away like, well, I'm not getting involved in this. And to tell you the truth, that really bothers the hell out of me. What's worse is afterwards, he will proceed to lecture me on why I was wrong to react the way I did. Like, first off, yes, I know that I was wrong to react the way I did. I don't need to hear it again. Secondly, I really don't appreciate hearing criticisms on how to conduct myself from people who don't experience the way my life is every day. I don't appreciate people who think they know what I'm supposed to be doing, how I'm supposed to handle myself, when they don't live here, when they don't experience this. That's a whole new level of being pissed off for me. Until you've experienced life living with a neurotic woman and a second older woman who's slowly and heartbreakingly losing her mind, losing her ability to think and do things and begin to feel useless, I'm sorry, you really don't have the right to comment. You really don't have the right to think you can dictate how I'm right or how I'm wrong in how I react to certain situations. I'm sorry. I just genuinely believe you don't have the right to do that. In fact, that was one of the biggest contributing factors in me deciding to finally start this podcast, was because I needed someone to talk to. And I guess who better to talk to than myself, and whoever's willing to listen. That's why this is never going to be one of those professional sounding or professional looking podcasts. Although it would be great if this eventually turned into that, that's not the main objective. The main objective is to just give me an outlet to put myself out there, drain my thoughts, and calm the hell down. And I hope I eventually accomplish that. It got me thinking about a lot of things, but the most important thing that it got me to think about was what my legacy would be when I eventually leave the mortal plane. I'm sure it's a question that you yourself have probably thought about at least once in your life, but no, this is different. Once you start getting these thoughts about the possibility of things just ending in one fell swoop, unexpectedly, you really start to realize I haven't done that much. I've been on this earth for 23 years, and I haven't really accomplished that much, if anything. Really. I mean, yes, if I talked to my mother about this, if I told her what I was thinking, she would probably say something along the lines of, "Honey, that's not true. You've accomplished plenty. Look at your trophy wall. Look at your diplomas. You graduated high school. You graduated college." And while yes, I'm not saying that neither of those things are bad, I mean, great, I graduated school. But that really doesn't mean that much. In this current tough economy, and with it becoming increasingly difficult to actually find a position in your choice of career, doubt and darkness start to cloud your mind, and it make you think that you're never going to be something. You're never going to leave an impact on the world. And that really is one of my biggest fears. Beyond just ending up as a deadbeat, I'm afraid that whatever I do in this world, it's not going to mean anything. It actually is a pretty morbid thought for me to consider, and Whenever I get these thoughts, I usually try to block them out because it's not something I want to spend vast amounts of time thinking about, but I think it is a topic worth considering. I know plenty of people will probably listen to this and say, well, that's not true. Look at the people you've impacted in your life. Look at your family. Look at your friends. Surely they will have a lasting impact from you. And I'm not going to deny that. I mean, I suppose when push comes to shove, the most important thing you have in this world is your family and your loved ones. But at the same time, they're going to die too someday. They're going to die, and whatever they did, whatever impact they had on you, will just become a memory. It won't really mean as much anymore as it did when they were still alive. And that's a terrifying thought for me to have. That's a terrifying thought for anybody. I keep saying to myself over and over, time and time again, that I am, in fact, maturing. I am getting stronger, I'm getting wiser, I'm getting more mature, I think things through better. I keep telling myself these things. And even if that's true, the more I think about it, the more I realize I'm not ready to adult. I am not ready to step out into the real world and try to take care of myself. I really am not. And it really makes me wonder what I'm actually going to do with my life once it actually starts going. Because I am really not in a good position, not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically. I don't believe in myself enough to say I can adult by myself with no problem. And usually when you hear that statement about someone, it usually means they're lazy, they're inconsiderate, they're selfish, they don't do anything, they don't contribute anything, and this is going to sound egotistical, but I am none of those things. I really am not. I've just been very sheltered my entire life. I wasn't, in a sense, allowed to learn these things as an adult. Learn what I needed to do to care for a house, care for people, or do any of the everyday adult things that adults do to survive. So on top of everything I said in this podcast, I now have those morbid thoughts clouding my mind, and it takes me to some really dark places, I'm not gonna lie. Because there are so many factors in my personal life that are constantly moving, it leaves this cloud of uncertainty about what I'm gonna do next, what I need to do next. And I have to be honest, I am really sick of it. I am so sick of all of these underlying factors. My grandmother's health, my mother's sanity, my employment predicament. All of these factors and more are leaving me with a cloud of uncertainty. I don't know which direction I should go in next. I don't know which direction I need to go in next. And it's with these thoughts in mind that make me really happy that I decided to start this podcast, because if I didn't get these thoughts out in some way, shape, or form, I swear I was going to go crazy. I still might. This doesn't guarantee that I won't, but it does help me be in a better position to remain calm and try to think things through rationally. It is a process, a constant, never-ending process. And sometimes it really gets annoying and really frustrating. But it's also one that I don't really have an option of quitting. Especially if I want to set a good example for myself and for eventually my future children.